And with that, we can move on to question 7. We've got, what is a binding price ceiling? So a price ceiling is an effort by the government to control the prices of goods and services sold in the market. And a price ceiling on good controls the maximum price that can be charged by suppliers, and this allows goods to remain affordable. In perfect competition, forces of demand and supply influence the price of the goods. When demand for a good increases, the price of the good rises to adjust to demand levels. The rising price influences sellers to supply more of the good, and at the same time, demand of the good falls, I would assume. Eventually, the equilibrium price is reached where demand is equal to supply. A binding price ceiling is when the price control is set below the equilibrium price. For example, the equilibrium price for a studio apartment is $3,000. At this price, 30 studio houses are available, and 30 studio houses are demanded. Hence, demand equals supply for a studio house of $3,000, aka we're in equilibrium in that market. But if the government sets a price ceiling for studio houses at $2,000, this means that the maximum price a supplier can charge per house is $2,000. Price ceiling of $2,000 is less than the equilibrium price of $3,000. Thus, a $2,000 price ceiling on the studio houses is a binding price ceiling. Binding price ceilings can lead to the development of an underground economy, like a black market. When a binding price ceiling exists, demand for the good is greater than the available supply for the good, and hence a black market develops to supply the good. For instance, in the studio rent market at a $2,000 price ceiling, 45 people demand studio houses, but the quantity supplied is just 20 houses. This means that 25 people would not be able to obtain a house from the market, and thus an underground economy develops to supply houses for those who cannot get a house on the market. That is a very well done explanation. I'm probably just going to add some graphs to it to help you guys visualize what this market looks like. So we essentially start off drawing this like any other market. We've got Q on the x-axis, P on the y-axis, and we've got our equilibrium quantity denoted Q star. And we've got our equilibrium price. We will denote that P star. And what they were touching on here is if we've got our equilibrium quantity and price here, and we set a price ceiling here, a price ceiling looks like a horizontal line. So if we set a price ceiling here, well, that doesn't matter because the equilibrium point is below it. So a price ceiling means that we can't have a price higher than what we've got here. So this would be an example of a price ceiling that isn't binding. What our junior tutor was getting at is what happens when there is a price floor. So when there's a price floor, or sorry, a price ceiling that is below equilibrium, that means the highest price we can set is this line here, even though the equilibrium price would have been up here. So I can get rid of equilibrium bit here. And I can instead show you what happens in this scenario. So the price ceiling is going to cross the demand curve once and the supply curve once. Where it crosses the demand curve, we've got quantity demanded. And where it crosses the supply curve, we've got quantity supplied. Now in this case, our quantity demanded is more than our quantity supplied. So we have a shortage. This is what our junior tutor was getting at in that example. Maybe, so at equilibrium, they were saying that the price was $3,000. And as a result, we sold 30 studio houses. So in this case, our equilibrium price was $3,000 and our equilibrium quantity was 30. Now we've got this price ceiling that has been set at $2,000. All right. And at this $2,000 price ceiling, there are 45 people demanding studio houses. So QD is going to equal 45. And we get that from seeing where the price ceiling here, this horizontal line, crosses the demand curve, which is downward sloping here. And we draw down to the x-axis. So that's 45. And at this point where supply curve, the upward sloping one, crosses the horizontal price curve, we see that 20 people. So there are 20 houses being supplied and 45 people demanding houses at this lower price. So as a result, the shortage is going to equal the quantity demanded, 45, minus the quantity supplied of 20. And we have shortage of 25 houses. And this is a scenario where a black market may develop. So I'll give you guys a second to take a picture of that, and then I will illustrate a price floor as well. Okay, gonna move on here. So next we can draw, I erased way too much of that. Next we can draw a scenario where there's a price floor. So again, supply slopes upwards, demand slopes downwards. Now if we set a price floor down here, so a price floor, sorry, this should be a straight line. Price floor means that's the cheapest a good should be. That won't matter because the equilibrium point is above it. But if we set a price floor above the equilibrium point, this means that they must charge at least this much for the good. So again, we're going to look at where this horizontal price line crosses both the demand curve and the supply curve. So our QD is going to be on the left side in this case, and our QS would be on the right side. And at this price, this would be a surplus because we've only got, say, this time around, I don't know, 15 people demanding, yeah, you know what, we'll keep this same example going. So this would be the 30 houses that we just talked about, and the equilibrium price was 3,000. But now the government says, like, housing cannot go for less than 4,500. Us poor millennials are priced out of the market. As a result, the quantity demanded is going to fall because a lot of people can't afford this new high price. And the quantity supplied is going to increase. So now maybe there's only 15 people demanding housing at this huge price. But there's going to be all these houses, say, 45 that are oversupplied. So in this case, a surplus would equal the 45 supplied minus the 15 demanded to equal 30. Technically, those numbers should sum. The same ones from the other example. I don't think they do because I was just making up as I went. So you'll have to forgive me. Give you guys a second to take a picture of that. And we can move on here to